People often say, children are a gift from heaven, a crutch to lean on in old age. But for me, the 15 sons I birthed from my own flesh and blood turned out to be the 15 most brutal jailers of my life. Can you imagine? The very children I once cradled in my arms became the ones who forced their mother to kneel and lick the floor clean, or forced me to eat burnt beans to learn a lesson in submission. I used to think I had given birth to demons. But no. The truth was even more horrifying. On that fateful day, I was shocked to realize the children didn't just turn into devils on their own. There was a hand, a master demon, who had been silently training them for 20 years to destroy me. I am Dottie. Today, I will tell you how I escaped that training camp disguised as a family. Please subscribe and comment, because some truths must be spread, even if they shake your beliefs. This story, no matter how painful, must be told. I am 76 years old. I was born and raised in a small town called Adrian, deep in Michigan, right on the border with Ohio. You know those little places that have more cows than people? It was like that. Nowadays I still live right here in Adrian, in a simple house, but full of love, very different from the life I had for many, many years. Every day I wake up early when the rooster is still crowing at the neighbors. And the first thing I do is water my plants. I have a little garden in front of the house that is my pride and joy. My baby, roses, geraniums, snake plants to ward off the evil eye. Those little things. After I finish taking care of my little plants, I prepare my hot coffee, grab my toast with butter, and sit there on the porch to watch the day break. It is in these moments, looking at the dawning sky, that I thank God for every day I live in peace. Do you know how I started this routine with plants? It was right after I managed to get out of that life I'm going to tell you about. I was living in a rented room, alone for the first time in my life, not really knowing what to do with myself. A very good neighbor, Mrs. Betty, gave me a small fern seedling and said, "Dottie, take care of this little plant like you should have been taken care of." I cried so much that day, honey, but I took care of that fern with all the affection in the world. And when I saw it growing, sprouting new leaves, green and beautiful, I understood that I could bloom again too. Since then, I never stopped cultivating my little plants. Today I have more than 30 pots scattered around the house. I'm sitting here in my rocking chair, that wooden one that creaks nicely when we move. I have a knitted blanket that I made myself covering my legs, because even in the heat here, this old lady already feels a little chill in her joints. On the little table next to me is my Bible, my prescription glasses, and a photograph of my grandbabies. Ah, the grandbabies I chose to have in my heart, not those of the blood who did me so much harm. I'll explain this better in a little bit. My dears, for many years of my life, I lived in a big house, on an isolated ranch, married to a powerful man. I had 15 children. 15? Can you imagine? But this was not a story of a happy and large family, as you might be thinking. It was a story of survival, of silent pain, and of a day when everything changed when I discovered a truth that split my heart in half, but which also gave me strength to be reborn. So, grab some more coffee there, settle in the chair, because this story begins back in my girlhood days, when I didn't even imagine what life would have in store for me. I was born in 1949, right at the end of June, when the summer was starting to heat up here in rural Michigan. My mother, Barbara, said that night it was storming heavily and she was afraid I wouldn't make it because I was so tiny. But I made it, thank God. I came into the world in our humble little house, with a dirt floor and wooden walls, with the help of the town midwife, Mrs. Grace, who smelled of medicinal herbs and had hands firm like old tree roots. My father, William, was a long-haul truck driver. He spent more time on the road with the truck loaded with merchandise than at home with us. He took coffee, corn, flour, sometimes salted pork, from here in Adrian to the neighboring towns. He was a man of few words, thin as a fishing rod, with skin leathery from so much Sunday. When he was home, he sat on the wooden stool at the kitchen door, rolled a tobacco cigarette, and stayed there smoking quietly, staring at nothing. He was never one for conversation, never one for affection, but he also never raised a hand to me or my brothers. He was just absent, you know? as if we were part of the landscape of the house, like the table, like the pots hanging on the wall. My mother was the opposite. Mrs. Barbara was all affection, all care, short, chubby, with those red cheeks of someone who lives near the wood stove. She always used a printed cotton dress, an apron over it, and a scarf tied around her head. She took care of everything: the house, the vegetable garden, the chickens, me and my 3 siblings. I was the second oldest. There was Robert, who was 2 years older than me. Then came me, then Elizabeth, 3 years younger. And finally, Thomas, the youngest, who was born when I was already about 8 years old. Do you know what I noticed, my son? All of us carried the names of kings and queens, or something proper. William, Barbara, Robert, Elizabeth, wait, I, Dorothy, was the exception. My mother told me years later that she had insisted so much to give me her grandmother's name, Mrs. Dorothy, who was French and had come to America on a ship when she was a young girl. My father had grumbled, but let it go. I think it was the only wish of my mother's that he respected in his whole life. We lived in a little house with only 3 rooms. There was the kitchen, which was where life happened, with the wood stove that my mother lit every day before the sun came up. The smell of burning wood, of brewed coffee, of day-old biscuits warming on the griddle, was the smell of my childhood. There was the living room that we only used when visitors came, with 2 long wooden benches, a small table in the middle, and a picture of Jesus, hanging on the wall, always with a sprig of dried rosemary in front, and there was the bedroom where we slept all piled up. My parents in a double bed that creaked, me and my sister Elizabeth on a straw mattress on the floor, and my brothers on another mattress on the other side. There was no door separating anything. We heard everything: Father's heavy breathing, the snoring, the low conversations at dawn. I learned early on to sleep light, always alert. Our routine was simple and heavy. My mother woke up first before the rooster crowed. I heard her getting up slowly, dragging her bare feet to the stove. Soon came the sound of wood being broken, the match striking, the fire starting to crackle. When the smell of coffee reached the bedroom, it was time to get up. I had to help Mom with breakfast, fetch water from the well, sift the cornmeal, feed the chickens. My sister Elizabeth was still too small to help, so she stayed playing in the yard while my mother and I worked. After breakfast, which was just biscuits with lard and coffee with lots of sugar, I went to the backyard to help Mom wash clothes in the stone tank. That tank was freezing, girl. The water came straight from the spring behind the hill, and was so cold it left our fingers red and stiff. But we scrubbed anyway, with that lye soap that Mom made, and wrung it out with force until the clothes were almost dry. Then we hung them on the barbed wire clothesline that my father had strung between 2 trees. Only around 10 inches the morning, when the sun was already high, did I have a little time to play. I played with the girls in the neighborhood. There was Linda, Karen, and Susan, who were my best friends. We played house under the big cherry tree that was in Mr. Dotter's, Johnson's lot, the neighbor. We made a little stove out of brick, little pots out of old cans, and little food out of leaves and dirt. Linda always wanted to be the mother because she was the bossiest. I was generally the oldest daughter who had to take care of the younger siblings. Funny how the game imitated life, right? Other times we played hide and seek in the middle of the cornfield that surrounded the houses. We ran between the stalks, hid behind the trees, screamed when we were caught. We went back home all dirty with brown dirt, with leaves in our hair, and got scolded by Mom. But it was worth it. Those were the only moments when I felt like a real child, you know? Light, free, without obligation. There was a day, I must have been about 7 years old, that Linda and I found a bird's nest fallen on the ground. There were 3 little blue eggs inside, so perfect they looked painted. We were enchanted. We took the nest carefully to my house, and my mother helped us put it in a box lined with cloth near the stove to keep it warm. I spent days taking care of those little eggs, waiting for them to hatch, but they never hatched. One day, my mother explained, with that soft voice of hers, that the little birds inside had already died, that without the mother's warmth, a bird had no way to survive. I cried so much that day. I cried for the birds, but I think I also cried for a sadness that I didn't even know how to explain properly at the time. When I turned 9, I started to notice things that went unnoticed before. I noticed that my mother was always tired, always with that expression of someone carrying an invisible weight. I noticed that when my father arrived from a trip, she got tense, spoke softly, moved around the house on tiptoe, as if she wanted not to be noticed. My brother Robert started to look like my father, quiet, serious, bossy with me and Elizabeth. He was only 11, but he already spoke to us the way an adult man speaks to a woman, giving orders, expecting to be obeyed. One night, I must have been about 10 years old. I woke up with a strange noise coming from my parents' room. It was my mother crying softly in that stifled way of someone who doesn't want to be heard. I heard my father's voice, thick and irritated. "Shut that mouth, Barbara. You're making a scene over nothing." Then silence. I lay there on my straw mattress, with my heart tight, not knowing what to do. The next morning, my mother had a swollen eye. She said she had bumped into the wardrobe door in the dark, but I was already big enough to know that a wardrobe door doesn't leave a bruise like that. It was around this time that the conversations about my marriage began. I hadn't even turned 12 yet, but my mother was already talking, all excited about a young man from the city who had seen me at church and had asked my father about me. "He is a good man, Dorothy. He has land, has cattle, will take good care of you." I didn't understand why I needed to get married so early. Linda was also already promised, Karen too. It seemed that this was what was expected of us. Grow up fast, become someone's wife, take care of a house and children. This young man was named Richard. He was 28 years old when he met me. I was 11. He was tall, strong, with a thick mustache and the look of someone who commands, wore a white shirt, always well ironed, a cowboy hat, and arrived at our house riding a Ford pickup truck that gleamed in the Sunday. He brought gifts for my mother, a cut of fabric, a bag of refined sugar, things we weren't used to having. My father got all important when he appeared, offered coffee, started conversations about cattle, business, and land. Richard looked at me in a way that made me uncomfortable. It wasn't the look of someone seeing a child, it was the look of someone evaluating, measuring, choosing. He smiled, showed his white teeth, and said, "This girl is going to be a beautiful and hard-working woman, just like her mother." My mother was all proud. I was ashamed, wanting to disappear. When I turned 12, my parents announced that I was going to marry Richard as soon as I turned 13. They said it was a blessing, that I was going to have a good life, that I would never be in need. My mother cried the day she told me, but they were tears of joy. She said, "You will have everything I never had, my daughter. A big house, beautiful clothes, plenty of food." It is a heartbreaking tragedy, often born of poverty, a mother believing she is saving her child with financial security, while completely missing the predator standing right in front of her. Barbara thinks she is giving Dottie a fairy tale, but Dottie's silence screams that she knows she is being sold into a golden cage. Brace yourself, because the reality of this blessing is about to be far darker than anyone in that little church could imagine. I wanted to ask, and love Mom, and the desire to study, to see the world, but I didn't ask. Girls didn't ask those things back then. I married Richard 3 days after my 13th birthday on a Thursday morning in the little church of Adrian. It was July of 1962, and it was a warm summer day. I remember I was trembling at the church door, but it wasn't just from nerves. No, my dears. It was from fear. Fear of leaving my mother's house, fear of that man I barely knew, fear of what was to come. I wore a white dress that my mother had sewn for weeks, working by the light of an oil lamp after everyone slept. It was simple, of cotton, with little embroidery on the hem and collar. My mother had cried when she dressed me that morning, fixing my hair tied in a bun that pulled my scalp. "You look so beautiful, my daughter, such a young lady." But when I looked in the broken little mirror she held, I saw only a frightened girl, with eyes too big for her thin face. The ceremony was quick. Father Michael spoke some words in Latin that I didn't understand. Richard put a thin ring on my finger. It was too big, kept spinning, and that was it. I was a married woman, had 13 years and 2 weeks of life. Richard's ranch was about 8 miles from my parents' house, in an even more isolated region. We arrived there by truck in the middle of the afternoon. I remember the big wooden gate, the dirt road that went up between the pastures and the house. My God in heaven. That house was huge compared to the little house where I grew up. It had 2 floors, 8 rooms, a porch in the front and back. It was painted white, with blue windows, and had an immense yard surrounded by apple trees, pear trees, and lemon trees. "It's all yours now," Richard said, with that way of someone giving a valuable handout. "You are the mistress of this house. You will take care of it well, won't you?" I nodded, still dizzy from it all. Mistress? I didn't feel like the mistress of anything. I felt like a doll that had been moved to a different shelf. In the first months, Richard was different from what I expected. He wasn't affectionate, never was, but he wasn't violent either. He was just distant, busy. He woke up before the sun rose, went out to take care of the cattle, the fences, the negotiations with other farmers. He came back only at night. He ate in silence the dinner I prepared with the help of Mrs. Nancy, the old cook, who already worked at the ranch before me, and then sat on the porch to smoke and drink whiskey until bedtime. The night part, my son. The night part was what hurt me the most. He went into the room, turned off the lamp, and did what a husband does with a wife. But there was no conversation, no care. It was mechanical, fast, painful. I lay there, looking at the dark ceiling, waiting for it to end. When it ended, he turned to his side and slept. I stayed awake, hands gripping the sheet, feeling my whole body ache and crying softly until sleep came. At 14, I got pregnant with the first child. Richard was happy in a way I had never seen. He called his friends to celebrate, killed a pig, made a barbecue. "It's going to be a man," he announced to everyone, beating his chest. "He's going to be my heir." I prayed in silence for it to be a girl. I thought if it was a girl, maybe he would be less interested, leave me alone for a while. But a man was born. In May of 1964, after a labor that lasted almost 20 hours, Mason was born, just like that, big and strong like Richard. They didn't even ask me what name I wanted to give. Richard decided, and that was it. When they put that little baby in my arms, I felt a strange thing. He was my son, had come out of me, but at the same time seemed to belong more to the father than to me. Richard took him, lifted him up for everyone to see, said, "This one here is going to be strong like his father. He's going to run all this land one day." I had barely finished recovering and I was already pregnant again and again and again. Between 1,964 and 1,978, I had 15 children, 13 boys and 2 girls. The names all chosen by Richard: Mason, Ethan, Liam, Noah, Logan, Lucas, Oliver, Elijah, James, Benjamin, the girls Scarlett and Hazel, and then 3 more boys, Jacob, Michael, and Alexander. There were 2 sets of twins in there, which is the only way my poor body managed to bring so many souls into this world in such a short time. You know, looking back, I ask myself how I didn't just snap in too. But in those days, we women were seen as breeding machines, like field soil. Men just planted their seeds without caring if the earth was dry or exhausted. God kept me here, I suppose, just so I could share this story with you today. With each child that was born, my body got more tired, more worn. I had deep stretch marks on my belly, breasts sagging from breastfeeding so much, my back aching constantly. At 29, I looked like I was 50. Mrs. Nancy, poor thing, tried to help me. She made herbal tea to give strength, massages, took care of the boys while I rested. "You need to tell your husband to stop, girl," she whispered. "Your body can't take it anymore." But how was I going to speak? A husband wasn't meant to be contradicted, he was meant to be obeyed. Richard ruled the house with an iron fist, had rules for everything. Breakfast had to be on the table exactly at 6 inches the morning. His shirt had to be ironed without a wrinkle. The children had to be quiet when he was home. "I don't want to hear brat noise," he said. "If I hear it, you're the one who gets a beating." And he followed through. Any crying, any running, any fighting between the boys, it was me who took the scolding. Sometimes just a scolding. Those that humiliate, that leave us feeling smaller than an ant. Other times, when he had drunk more, it was a belt, it was hair pulling, it was a shove against the wall. But the worst, my dears, the worst wasn't even what he did to me. It was what he was teaching our sons. I saw clearly the seed he was planting in those boys. From a young age, he repeated, "Men command and women obey. Men are strong and women are weak." He believed that a man must impose discipline in his house, otherwise it would descend into chaos. Mason, the oldest, at 8 years old, already spoke to me the way his father spoke. "Mom, bring my plate here. Mom, did you heat my water for the bath?" He didn't ask, he ordered. When the boys reached 10, 12 years old, it got worse. They started to imitate their father in everything, in the way they walked, in the way they talked, in the way they looked at me. You might be wondering, didn't even one of them love their mother? But in a house ruled by fear, kindness is seen as a fatal weakness. To survive living next to a monster, my boys chose to become little monsters themselves. And that is the greatest tragedy of being a mother. It was as if I ceased to be a mother and became a maid, or worse, became an object that was there to serve, to clean, to cook, to take a beating when things didn't go the way they wanted. There was a thing that happened, and that I took a while to understand properly. Richard traveled a lot. He had cattle business in various cities in the region. He went to Lansing, to Flint, to Detroit. He stayed away sometimes for a week. I thought that when he left, the house would be lighter, more peaceful. In the first few years, it even was. But as the boys grew up, everything changed. The first time I noticed something was very wrong was when Mason was about 15. The father had traveled on Monday to Lansing, was going to return only on Saturday. On Tuesday morning, I was in the kitchen preparing lunch. Stew, mashed potatoes, a pork chop casserole. The older boys, Mason, Ethan, Liam, and Noah, entered the kitchen all together. There was an expression on their faces that gave me a chill down my spine. "Mom, Dad said that when he's not here, we are the ones who rule here," Mason said, crossing his arms. He was bigger than me already, strong, looking like a grown man. "Of course, my son," I replied, stirring the pot. "You are the men of the house when Dad isn't here. You can rest assured that I take care of everything properly, isn't that right?" Ethan continued. He was 13. "We don't just want you to take care, we want you to obey, just like you obey Dad." My heart started to beat faster. "But I obey, my son, don't I?" That was when Mason got close. So close I smelled his sweat. "You talked back to Dad last week. We heard. You said you were tired. Dad didn't like it." He paused, and his eyes went hard. "We won't tolerate disrespect either." Before I could answer, Liam took the wooden spoon from my hand. "Go to the living room. We want to talk to you." It wasn't a request. It was an order. My boys that I had carried in my belly, that I had breastfed, that I had rocked to sleep, were giving me orders as if they were my owners. It is heartbreaking to witness the very children she nurtured turn into her captors, twisting a mother's love into a weapon against her. But as painful as this betrayal is, it is only the beginning of a much darker reality that Dottie is forced to endure. Stay with us, because you need to see just how deep this trap goes before she can find a way out. I went to the living room with my legs shaking. But the pain wasn't just fear, my dears. It was heartbreak. I looked at Mason standing there, his chest puffed out like a little rooster, and I didn't see the tyrant he was becoming. I saw the 5-year-old boy who used to scrape his knees and run to me for a kiss to make it better. I saw the toddler who used to sleep clutching my finger. That was the cruelest part of Richard's plan. He didn't just hurt my body. He stole the souls of my babies. He took the love they had for me and twisted it until it became something ugly, something sharp. I wasn't just losing my dignity. I was grieving 15 living children who had died inside, replaced by soldiers in their father's war against me. They surrounded me, 4 teenage boys looking down at me, making me feel small. And there, on that Tuesday afternoon, with the sun coming through the cracks in the window and the smell of lunch burning on the stove I left unattended, my sons taught me the first lesson of what my life would be from then on. Mason spoke for almost an hour. He said that while Dad was away, they were responsible for maintaining discipline in the house, that I had to obey them the same way I obeyed Dad, that if I failed in any task, they would correct it the way Dad corrected. The other 3 stood there around, nodding, agreeing with every word. When they finished speaking, they ordered me back to the kitchen. The stew had boiled over, the meat had stuck to the bottom of the pot. I cleaned everything crying, with hands trembling so much I broke a plate. The sound of the plate shattering on the floor echoed through the whole house. Seconds later, I heard heavy steps coming towards the kitchen. "Mom, breaking things now?" Ethan said from the door with that tone that froze my soul. I guess she hasn't learned yet. And that was when, my dears, at that moment, with my sons looking at me like that I understood. Hell had just begun, but the worst was yet to come. The worst was going to be finding out where they had learned exactly what to do with me when Dad wasn't around. The years that followed were the darkest of my life. My dears, if I could erase any piece of my memory, it would be this period between 1979 and 1985. But you can't erase it, right? It stays there engraved on our soul, heavy as a stone in the chest. The system my sons created was simple and cruel. Every time Richard traveled, and he traveled more and more, sometimes twice a month, the boys assumed control of the house. In the beginning, it was just the four oldest, Mason, Ethan, Liam, and Noah. But as the others grew, they joined the group too. By 1983, with the girls gone, there were 13 adolescent and grown boys living in that house. 13 against 1. They had rules, absurd rules that changed according to their will. One day I had to serve lunch exactly at noon. If I was 5 minutes late, there was a consequence. Another day, they decided that the clothes had to be ironed and folded in a specific way, with the fold facing inside, not outside. If I made a mistake, there was a consequence. The dishes had to be washed and put away before 8 at night. The porch floor had to be swept 3 times a day. The food couldn't have too much salt, nor too little. It had to be at the exact point they liked. And do you know what the consequence was, my son? It was what they called a correction session. They called me to the living room, the same room where I had received my mother's visit years ago, where there was the picture of the saint on the wall, where it should be a family place, but that room had become my court. They sat on the benches and chairs, forming a semicircle. I stood in the middle. Mason, who was the leader, always started. "Mom, did you fail today? Do you know where you failed?" Sometimes I knew, sometimes I didn't, but my answer didn't matter. They had already decided what my punishment would be. It started with words, humiliations. "You are incompetent. You're not even good for taking care of a house. Dad should have married another woman, one who was worth something." Each word was like a slap. I stood there with my head down, biting my lip not to cry, because if I cried, they said I was being dramatic, and then it got worse. After the words came the physical punishments. Belts. They took the belt off and hit my back, my legs, my arms. They didn't hit the face because it left marks, and when Dad came back, he would see. They had this care, you know? This cold calculation of how to hurt without leaving visible evidence. Straps, too. Ethan was the one who liked to use a belt the most. He wrapped the end around his hand and snapped it in the air before hitting my back. The noise alone made me tremble before the pain even arrived. There was one time, it was winter of 1981, that I burned the beans. I was so tired that day, had spent the night awake with Alexander, who had a fever, that I ended up dozing off, standing up, leaning on the kitchen counter while the beans cooked. When I woke up with the smell of burning, it was too late. The pot had stuck, the beans had turned to charcoal. The boys called me to the living room. There were 7 that day. The oldest were already 20, 19, 17 years old. Grown men, strong. When I entered the room and saw all of them there, I felt my legs weaken. "Did you burn the food?" Mason said with that cold voice he had learned from his father. "We're going to go without lunch because of you. Do you think that's fair?" "No, my son. I'm sorry. I'll make something else quickly." "I'll make something else," I begged. "You're not going to make anything," Liam replied. "You're going to learn not to waste food." He took the burnt pot from the kitchen, still steaming, and put it in front of me. "Eat." I looked at him without understanding. "What do you mean, my son?" "Eat the burnt beans. Since you made it, you eat it." My dears, I tried to explain that I couldn't, that it was too burnt, that it would make me sick, but they insisted. And when I refused, they grabbed the belt. They beat me so much that day that I spent 3 days unable to lie on my back. Mrs. Nancy, poor thing, cried while applying ointment to my wounds. This isn't right, Mrs. Dorothy. This isn't the way a son treats a mother. But what could we do? She was the maid. I was a hostage. Neither of us had anywhere to run. The worst of all, and this hurts me to this day to tell, was seeing my 2 daughters growing up in the middle of that. Scarlett and Hazel, my girls. I prayed every day that they would be blind to that violence, that they wouldn't get used to it. But how could they not get used to it, right? They saw their brothers treating me that way, saw their father treating me that way, and learned that was how it worked. That man orders, woman lowers her head. Scarlett, when she turned 15, was promised to a farmer from Flint, a 40-year-old man, a widower, with 3 children. I tried to talk to her, tried to warn, my daughter, don't accept this marriage, run away, leave, go live with your aunt in Grand Rapids. But she looked at me with contempt. Mom, are you weak? I'm not going to be weak. Like you, I'm going to marry a good man, and I'm going to be respected. She married in 1982, and I never heard from her again. They say she disappeared a few years later. To this day, I don't know if she's alive or dead. Hazel left home at 16. She ran away with a trucker who was passing through the region. She left a note under my pillow. Mom, I'm sorry, but I can't take this house anymore. I prefer to risk it out there than stay here. When the boys found out she had run away, guess who got beaten? Me. As if I was to blame for my daughter running away from the hell they themselves created. The isolation was complete. I couldn't leave the ranch. There was no phone, no car, no way to ask for help. My mother had died in 1980 of a stroke. When I went to the funeral, I came back knowing I had lost the only person in the world who truly cared about me. My father had already died years before. My brothers had their own lives, their own problems. No one knew what happened inside that big, beautiful house, surrounded by fruit trees and green pasture. On the outside, it was paradise. On the inside, it was hell. There was a day that marked me a lot, my dears. It was Mason's birthday in May of 1984. He was turning 20. Richard had returned from a trip just for the celebration. We killed a steer, made a barbecue, invited half the town. The house was full of people, music, laughter. I served everyone. Brought beer, brought meat, cleaned the table. No one noticed I was limping. I had taken a belt to the thigh 2 days before because Jacob's clothes hadn't dried in time. At the end of the night, when everyone was already drunk, Mason stood on a chair and made a speech. He talked about his father, about how he was a man of respect, an example. He talked about his brothers, about how they were united and strong. And then he looked at me and I thanked my mother, who always took care of us, who always kept the house in order. Everyone applauded. I forced a smile, waved. Inside I was bleeding. Later that night, when the guests left, Richard called me to the bedroom. I thought he was going to want what a husband wants, but no. He sat on the edge of the bed, lit a cigarette, and said, "You are too thin, Dorothy. You look sick. People are starting to talk. It gives me a bad name, understand? You need to take better care of yourself." I stayed silent. He continued, "And the boys said that you've been failing in your duties when I'm not here. This can't continue. I can't travel worried, thinking the house will turn into a mess." I took a deep breath and risked it. "Richard, the boys, they are very hard on me. They treat me badly when you leave." He took a long puff on the cigarette, looked at me, and laughed. It wasn't a laugh of joy, it was a laugh of mockery. "Hard, Dorothy. They are men. Men need to learn to command, and you need to learn to obey, which is your role." He stubbed out the cigarette in the ashtray and stood up. "If you can't handle it, that's your problem. Straighten up." That night, lying in the dark, I understood a terrible thing. There was no salvation, nowhere to run, no one who would listen to me. The whole world thought I had a blessed life, married to a rich man, 15 healthy children, big house. Who would believe that inside those walls I was less than nothing? That is the devil's greatest trick, my dears. On the outside, everything looks shiny and respectable, earning the world's admiration, so that the screams for help inside are blocked by a wall of prejudice. People often only believe the beautiful lies they want to see, that my own children, whom I had birthed and raised, treated me like a pack animal that gets beaten when it doesn't work right. I started having bad thoughts of ending it all at once. I looked at the deep well in the backyard and thought, will there be time to fill my lungs with water before someone pulls me out? I looked at the big kitchen knife and thought, will it hurt much? But then came the guilt, the religion my mother had put in my head since I was little. Suicide is a mortal sin, Dottie. Those who kill themselves go to hell. And I thought, I'm already in hell. Could there be any worse than this? If any of you listening to this have ever stood on that ledge like I did, I want to reach through this screen and hug you tight. I know you don't actually want to die. It's just that the pain of keeping on living has become too heavy to carry. In 1985, I was 36 years old, but looked 60. My hair had started to turn gray. My teeth were falling out. I had lost 3 already. My skin was yellowish, full of purple bruises that never completely disappeared. I weighed 95 pounds. Mrs. Nancy forced me to eat, put the plate in front of me, and stood there until I finished. You need strength, Mrs. Dorothy. Need to endure. Endure for what? I thought. But I ate mechanically, tasting nothing. It was that year that the worst happened. The moment that to this day when I close my eyes still makes me tremble. It was a Saturday afternoon, August, a little chilly. Richard had traveled on Thursday, was going to return only on Monday. The boys had invented a new rule. I couldn't sit during the day, had to stay standing, working all the time. If they caught me sitting, I got the belt. I was exhausted. I had spent the dawn washing clothes. They dirtied clothes on purpose, I'm sure, just to give me more work. My legs were swollen, varicose veins pulsing with pain. At 3 inches the afternoon, I couldn't take it. I sat on a stool in the kitchen, just a minute, just to rest. I closed my eyes and sleep came fast, in that heavy way of someone at their limit. I woke up with a scream. It was Benjamin, one of the middle ones, who had entered the kitchen and seen me sleeping sitting up. Look at that, the lazybones is sleeping on the job, he called the others. They all came, 11 boys, because the 2 youngest were still children and were playing outside. 11 sons of mine surrounded me in that kitchen. Are you mocking us, Mom? Mason said, and there was real anger in his eyes. We make the rules, you ignore them. We correct, you don't learn. I think we've been too soft. He looked at his brothers. Today she will learn for real. My dears, what happened that afternoon I will not describe in detail, because it still makes me sick to remember. But I will say that I screamed so much my voice went hoarse that Mrs. Nancy locked herself in the back room and prayed the rosary aloud so as not to hear my screams. That when it ended, I was on the kitchen floor, curled up, my whole body aching, mouth bleeding, and with the certainty that I was going to die there in that house and no one would cry for me. But I didn't die. The body handles more than we imagine, you know? I stayed in bed for 3 days. Mrs. Nancy took care of me, hid from the boys that I wasn't able to get up. She told them I had a fever, a bad flu, that I needed rest. They didn't even care. While I was bedridden, they ate the food Mrs. Nancy made and thought it was great not to have to put up with my incompetence. When Richard returned on Monday, I had already dragged myself out of bed. I was standing, preparing dinner, pretending everything was fine. He didn't even ask how the week had been. He ate, praised the food, and went to the porch to smoke. Another normal week at the Ranch of Horrors. It was after that episode that something began to change inside me. It wasn't hope. No, hope I didn't have anymore. It was anger. A cold anger stored deep down. An anger that said, I'm not going to die here. I won't give them that satisfaction. I didn't know yet how I was going to get out of there, but I knew that one day, somehow, I was leaving, even if it was the last act of my life. September of 1985 arrived with that dry heat that leaves the earth cracked and the throat rough. It had been 3 weeks since that terrible episode in the kitchen, and I still felt pain in my ribs when I breathed deep. But I kept standing, kept working, kept surviving. That was all I knew how to do. Survive one more day. Richard had traveled again. this time to Lansing to resolve a land deed issue. Said he would take a week, maybe 10 days. When I heard that, my stomach turned. 10 days. 10 days alone with them. 10 days of correction sessions, of humiliations, of pain. I prayed softly. God, give me strength. Only that. Just strength to endure. The first days were as always. Absurd rules, endless work, punishments for any little thing. On Tuesday, Lucas said his shirt smelled bad. It didn't. I had washed it right, ironed it, folded it, but he said it did, so it did. I took 3 lashes. On Wednesday, Michael thought the meat at lunch was tough. I took more lashes and went without eating, as punishment for wasting good food. On Thursday, Jacob tripped over a broom I had left leaning against the wall. "Do you want to kill me, Mom? Want me to break my face?" he screamed. And there I went to the living room again. But it was on Friday that everything changed. It was on Friday that the last drop fell, and the cup that was already cracked shattered completely. It was late afternoon. The sun was already setting, painting the sky that purplish orange that always reminded me of my childhood. I was in the kitchen finishing washing the dinner dishes. My hands were red and swollen from the hot water, nails broken from scrubbing pots so much. Mrs. Nancy had gone home early. She lived in a small house at the back of the ranch, but on Fridays she visited her sister in town and only returned on Saturday morning. The boys were all in the living room, playing cards and drinking beer. I heard their laughter, the shouts when someone won the round. It seemed like a normal gathering of brothers, you know. If someone from outside saw it, they would think it was beautiful. United family having fun. No one would imagine what happened in that house. I finished the dishes, dried my hands on my apron, and went to the living room to say I was going to sleep. I always did that. Asked permission to sleep, as if I were a child, and they were my parents. "Excuse me, my sons. Can I go rest?" Mason looked at me over the cards. He had a strange expression on his face, a mixture of amusement and cruelty. "Wait a minute, Mom. We want to talk to you." My heart raced. Talking was never a good sign. "What is it, my son?" He dropped the cards on the table and stood up. The others did the same, one by one, until they were all standing, surrounding me. There were 12 of them present that night. Alexander, the youngest, was asleep. 12 adolescent and adult males, strong, tall, and me, small, thin, tired. "We were talking here," Ethan started, "and we think you're getting very relaxed, failing too much. Every day there is something wrong. I try, my son. I swear I—" "Shut up," Liam cut in. "We didn't ask anything. We're talking, you listen." I stayed silent, trembling. Mason continued. "We decided that today the correction will be different, more educational for you to learn once and for all." That was when Logan left the room and came back carrying a bucket full of water. My dears, when I saw that bucket, something inside me screamed, "Danger! What are you going to do?" I asked, and my voice came out thin, frightened. "Nothing much, Mom," Mason said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You're just going to stay kneeling here, holding this bucket until we decide you've learned. Seems like little, right? A bucket of water. But, my dears, that bucket was heavy, and staying kneeling on the hard wooden floor, with knees that already ached from working so much, with arms extended holding the weight, was torture. Listening to this level of cruelty is difficult for anyone with a heart. But it is in these moments of absolute despair that the human spirit is truly tested. Dottie is reaching her breaking point, yet she doesn't know that this pain is preparing her for a shocking revelation that will change everything. Don't turn away now. Her turning point is coming. I knelt. I took the bucket, stretched my arms forward, as they ordered. In the beginning I held it, but after 5 minutes my arms started to tremble. After 10, the pain was like fire rising from my wrists to my shoulders. After 15, I was crying, begging, "Please, my sons, I can't take it anymore." "Sure you can take it," Ethan said, drinking his beer calmly. "Women can handle a lot. You said so yourself." When the bucket fell, because it fell, my arms wouldn't hold anymore. The water spread all over the floor. The boys exploded. "Look what you did, soaked everything. Now you'll have to clean for hours." They gave me a cloth and ordered me to dry the floor, still on my knees, dragging the soaked cloth, scrubbing every board. My tears dripped on the floor along with the bucket water. I was at my limit, at my absolute limit, and it was there at that moment, drying that floor, hearing the laughter of my sons, that I had a thought I had never had before, a clear, crystal clear thought that cut through all the confusion in my mind. I prefer to die trying to get out of here than to die inside here. I finished cleaning. They sent me to the kitchen to make fresh coffee. I went with wobble legs, with my whole body aching. I put the water to boil, put the powder in the filter, and, while the coffee dripped, I held on to the edge of the stove and thought, how? How do I get out of here? I had no money, nowhere to go, knew no one who could help me. My whole family had died or disappeared. The neighbors were friends of Richard. The whole town respected him and thought I was lucky to be his wife. If I ran away, they would look for me, bring me back. And then, God in heaven, what would they do to me? I took the coffee to the living room, served each one. When I got close to Mason, my hand trembled and I spilled a little on the table. It was an accident. I swear to God it was an accident, but he didn't care about that. He jumped up, took the cup still hot, and threw the rest of the coffee on my blouse. I screamed in pain. The coffee burned my belly, my chest. I ran to the kitchen, tore off the blouse, threw cold water. The skin turned red, stinging. I collapsed on the floor right there and sobbed so loud I couldn't stop. All the pain of those years came out at once. I screamed, beat the floor with my fists, spat out the words I had never had the courage to say. God, why? Why did you abandon me? Why did you let me suffer so much? I can't take it anymore. I can't take it. Mrs. Nancy wasn't there to console me. The boys didn't come to see if I was okay. I stayed alone on the cold kitchen floor, with my skin burned, body crushed, soul shattered. And it was there, in my darkest moment, that something strange happened. I remembered my mother. Not a common memory, no. It was as if she were there with me. I remembered the day she taught me to plant beans in the garden when I was tiny. She had said, "Look, Dottie, the seed needs to stay in the dark of the earth, needs to be crushed, needs to almost die. But that is where new life is born. Life springs from the deepest, darkest soil." Could that be it? Did I need to reach rock bottom to be able to rise? Had God not abandoned me, but was waiting for me to find strength I didn't even know I had? I got up from that floor, washed my face in cold water, put ointment on the burn, put on another blouse, and made a decision. I was leaving. I didn't know when, didn't know how, but I was. I was going to wait for the right moment, gather strength, and leave, even if I died trying. In the following days, I started paying attention to things I had never paid attention to, where Richard kept the money. When the boys slept deepest, which door creaked least? I started hiding food, a piece of bread here, a banana there, wrapped it in a cloth and hid it under the mattress. I started thinking about routes. If I left at dawn, by the back road, could I get to the town before the sun rose? I told Mrs. Nancy. On a Sunday morning, when the boys had gone fishing and I was helping her peel potatoes, I whispered, "Mrs. Nancy, I'm leaving." She stopped peeling and looked at me with those old and wise eyes. "When?" "I don't know yet, but I am." You won't report me, will you?" She held my hand tightly. "I pray every day for you to have the courage to go, girl. And when you go, I'll say I didn't see anything, that I woke up and you were gone. But be careful, they are dangerous." "I know," I said, "but staying here is even more dangerous." Richard returned the following Sunday, 10 days of travel. He was tired, dirty from the road, with that smell of sweat and cigarette smoke. He entered the house, greeted his sons, and went straight to take a shower. I prepared dinner, roast chicken with rice and stuffing, the way he liked. The table was set, the food was good, everything perfect. We dined in silence. After dinner, he went to the porch to smoke. I started washing the dishes. My mind was racing. Can I leave this week or wait a little longer? And if it goes wrong? And if they catch me? I was so lost in my thoughts that I didn't hear when he entered the kitchen. I only realized when he spoke right behind me. "Dorothy, the boys said you need correction." I froze, turned slowly. He was there leaning on the doorframe with arms crossed and that expression I knew so well. I have been trying, Richard. I swear I have." "That's not what they say," he replied. "They say you are talking back. Lazy, incompetent." He took a step in my direction. "I think I've been too soft on you." And it was at that moment, my dears, that I did something I had never done. Something that sealed my fate once and for all. I looked into his eyes and said, "I can't take it anymore, Richard. I can't take you anymore. I can't take them anymore. You kill me a little bit every day." The silence that followed was heavy as lead. Richard stared at me, processing what I had just said. And then, to my surprise, he laughed. But it wasn't a laugh of joy. It was a laugh of someone who just discovered something very interesting. "Is that so?" he said, distilling the poison. "So, tomorrow, when I go out again, I'm going to Lansing to settle some business. You'll have the chance to show the boys how well you can take it." He came closer until I felt his breath on my face. "And when I get back, we'll talk about this loose tongue of yours." He left the kitchen. I stood there, trembling. What had I done? Why had I opened my mouth? Now they were going to be even worse. But something inside me had changed. I had told the truth. For the first time in more than 20 years of marriage, I had spoken what I felt. And it didn't matter the price I was going to pay. I was already decided anyway. I was leaving. I was going to wait for him to travel. I was going to wait for an opportunity. And I was leaving. I didn't know the opportunity was going to arrive faster than I imagined. I didn't know that Richard himself was going to accidentally hand me the key to my liberation, and I didn't know that before leaving, I was going to discover a truth so terrible that it would change everything I thought I knew about that house and that family. On Monday morning, Richard left for Lansing, said he would take about 5 days. He had to resolve a land document issue, sign papers at the notary. When his truck disappeared around the curve of the road, raising that red dust that took a while to settle, I took a deep breath. 5 days. I had 5 days to endure one more round of torture with my sons, and afterwards I was leaving. I spent that Monday and Tuesday entirely preparing everything. I hid more food. I already had some 3-day-old buns, 2 bananas, a piece of cheese wrapped in cloth. I took an old cloth bag and hid it under the mattress, along with a change of clothes. At night, when everyone slept, I stayed awake planning. I was going to leave at dawn on Saturday. The boys always drank a lot on Friday night, slept late on Saturday. I would have time to get far before they realized I was gone. Mrs. Nancy helped me however she could. On Wednesday morning, she gave me a little money she had saved. It wasn't much. It was $20, crumpled. But she said, "Take it, my daughter. God knows I wanted to be able to give you more, but it's what I have." I cried, clinging to her. "You are the only good person in this house," I said. She squeezed my face with her calloused hands and replied, "You are also good, Mrs. Dorothy. Too good for these people. Go and don't look back." The boys during those days were worse than ever. It was as if they knew their father was going to take longer this time and wanted to take advantage. On Tuesday, they made me kneel on corn. They scattered hard corn kernels on the porch floor and ordered me to stay kneeling there for an hour. My knees bled, turned purple, swollen. On Wednesday, Michael invented that the soup had no salt, threw the plate on the floor and ordered me to clean. Yes, my dears, I cleaned it with my tongue. I ran my tongue over that filthy floor, swallowing the humiliation along with the dirt and spilled soup. I did it because I knew that in just 3 more days, I would never have to do this again. Thursday arrived. I woke up with a strange weight in my chest, a bad feeling I couldn't explain. I prayed more than usual, asked for protection from the Virgin Mary, made coffee, fed the boys, washed clothes, swept the house. Normal routine, but that weight didn't leave. It was noon when it happened. I was in the kitchen preparing lunch. Shepherd's pie with ground beef, white rice, and collard greens. Mrs. Nancy was by my side, cutting the greens very fine, the way the boys liked. We talked softly about silly things. The weather that was getting hotter, the apple tree that was loaded with fruit. Normal things that made me forget for a minute the hell I lived in. The boys were all in the living room. I heard their noise, laughter, loud conversations, someone pushing furniture. They were doing their discipline session, as they called it. Only this time it wasn't with me. It was with Alexander, the youngest, who was 11 and had been caught stealing sweets from the pantry. They were teaching him not to steal. I heard the boys crying, the shouts of the older brothers. My heart bled. But what could I do? If I interfered, they would be worse with him and with me too. Suddenly, the noise stopped. Complete silence. I found it strange. Looked at Mrs. Nancy. She looked at me. "What could it be?" she whispered. I didn't have time to answer. We heard heavy steps on the back porch, the one that led straight to the kitchen. Boot steps. Only one person wore boots like that. Richard. The door opened. He entered the kitchen sweating, clothes dusty from travel, hat in hand. His eyes swept the room. Me, Mrs. Nancy, the pots on the stove. Then he looked towards the living room, from where absolute silence still came. My heart raced. A part of me, that part that still had hope, still believed in miracles, thought, "Thank God he came back. He will see what the boys were doing. He will see that they are violent, that they hurt me, that this house became a hell. He will save me." Richard walked slowly towards the living room. I dropped the spoon I was using to stir the stew and went after him with wobbly legs. Mrs. Nancy tried to hold me. "Don't go, Mrs. Dorothy," she whispered hurriedly, but I had already gone. When I reached the living room door, I saw the scene. Alexander huddled in a corner with a swollen eye and bleeding nose. The other 11 sons forming a semicircle, some holding a slipper, others holding a belt, all frozen, looking at their father with a look of fright. They had been caught in the act. The silence was so heavy you could hear everyone's breathing. I was there standing in the door, holding onto the frame, waiting for Richard to explode with anger, expecting him to scream, "Beat the boys, defend me, defend Alexander, end that madness once and for all." Richard looked at each son slowly, then looked at Alexander crying in the corner, then looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that made me tremble all over. It wasn't surprise, it wasn't anger at the boys, it was disappointment. Disappointment with them, not with me. He turned to Mason, the oldest, and said with a low and cold voice that cut my soul like a knife, "I leave for a week, and is this all you managed to do?" It seems like time stopped. I hadn't understood properly what he meant. Mason also seemed confused. "Dad," Richard pointed to Alexander, "you are wasting time with a brat? Let the kid learn alone." He paused and then looked at me. And what came next destroyed my soul. "Where is she? Where is your mother? Why are you leaving her there in the kitchen calm when I left you responsible?" My dears, it was at that moment that the ground opened under my feet. It was at that moment that I understood. It wasn't my children who created the system of abuse. It was him, Richard, my husband, their father. He had taught, he had ordered, he had created all that on purpose. "But, Dad," Ethan tried to explain, "we corrected her yesterday. She is obeying properly." "She is obeying?" Richard raised his voice for the first time and everyone shrank back. He walked to where I was, pulled me by the arm, dragged me to the middle of the room. I stumbled, tried to balance myself, but he was too strong. He threw me on the floor right there in the middle of that semicircle of sons. "Look at her, look." The boys looked. I was on my knees on the floor, hands supported on the boards, breathing fast, afraid, in pain, in horror. "She's still standing? She's still conscious?" Richard said, and there was contempt in his voice. Pure contempt. He turned to Mason. "You are the oldest. You are responsible when I'm not here, and you are failing. Are you letting her boss you around? Are you letting her get comfortable?" He spat the word comfortable as if it were a curse word. At that moment, the trembling in my hands stopped. It wasn't courage yet, no. It was something colder. It was clarity. I looked at Richard, and for the first time, I didn't see a husband or a father. I saw a puppeteer. He wasn't disappointed that they had hurt me. He was disappointed that they hadn't broken me. And in that silence, while my sons looked at their shoes in shame for failing to destroy their mother, the last thread of attachment I had to this life snapped. I realized that my endurance wasn't a virtue to them, it was an insult. And if I stayed, they wouldn't stop until I was in the ground, just to prove to their father that they were men. I didn't cry. I just froze the part of my heart that held their names. "Dad, we tried," Liam started. "Tried," Richard interrupted. "If you had tried for real, she wouldn't be standing here now. She would be in bed, or better yet, in the hospital." He turned to me, stared at me with hatred. "You're enjoying it, right, Dorothy? Enjoying seeing my sons failing? Thinking they are weak, that they won't be able to dominate you? Richard, please." I tried to speak, but he cut me off with a scream. "Shut up." He looked at the sons again. "You will never be real men if you don't learn this. A woman needs to know her place. And her place is on the ground. It is serving. It is in fear. If she isn't afraid, you aren't doing it right." He took the belt from Logan's waist. "I'm going to show you how it's done, and you will learn. Now, my dears, what happened in the following minutes I will not describe. Not because I don't remember. I remember every second, every pain, every humiliation. But because some things are too heavy to put into words, what I will say is that Richard taught his sons while I was there on the floor. He taught where to hit, how to hit, what to say, how to humiliate. It was a class, a torture class, and my sons watched, learned, absorbed every word as if it were gospel. When it ended, I could barely move. I stayed there on the floor, really expecting to die, waiting for that pain to stop somehow. I heard Richard's voice distant, speaking to the sons. "Now you know, when I travel again, I want you to do exactly this. No slack, no pity. She needs to understand that here you are the ones who rule and that you learned from me." "Yes, Dad," I heard the chorus of voices responding. Steps moving away, door slamming. Silence. I stayed there alone in the living room, whole body aching, but with a clarity in my mind I had never had before. There weren't 16 demons in that house. There were 15 sons and a master demon who had created all the others in his image and likeness. I don't know how long I stayed there. Could have been minutes, could have been hours. When I managed to drag myself to the kitchen, Mrs. Nancy was sitting in the chair crying. "I heard everything, my daughter. I heard everything." She helped me sit, gave me water, cleaned my face with a damp cloth. "Mrs. Nancy," I said, and my voice came out firm, despite everything. "I'm leaving today. Tonight. But you're not in any condition. It doesn't matter," I cut in. "If I stay one more day, I die. Either they kill me or I kill myself. I'm leaving today." She held my hand. "Then I will help you." We spent the rest of the day planning. Richard had gone out again, went to town to resolve something. Said he would be back at night. The boys had gone to take care of the cattle, only returned in the late afternoon. It was our chance. Mrs. Nancy helped me get the bag I had hidden. We put the food, the change of clothes, the little money. She gave me some more change she found kept in an old tin. "It's not much, but it's what I have." She also gave me a wool blanket. "It's going to be cold tonight. Cover up well." "And you?" I asked. "Will they blame you?" "Leave it to me," she said. "I'm old. They won't do anything to me. And if they do, at least I die knowing I saved a life." When the sun began to set and the boys returned from the pasture, I acted normal. Prepared dinner. Cornbread with meat sauce. Served. They ate, talked amongst themselves, ignored me. It was as if what had happened in the morning was routine, normality, and for them it was. After dinner I did everything I always did. Washed dishes, tidied kitchen, swept floor. When I finished, I said goodbye without saying goodbye. "Good night, my sons." No one answered. Went to the room, lay on the bed, waited. Midnight. I got up without making noise. Took the bag from under the mattress. Put on old shoes. Put on a coat over my clothes. Looked at the bed where I had slept for more than 20 years. Looked at the room where I had been violated, humiliated, destroyed, and whispered, "Never again." That whisper is the loudest sound in the world when you've been silenced for decades. She is taking the first terrifying step into the unknown, but the road to true freedom is dangerous and uncertain. Keep listening to find out if Dottie truly manages to leave this hell behind for good. Some folks might judge me, call me a bad mother for leaving them behind. But listen to me, a dead mother can't save anyone. I had to leave to save the only life that still belonged to me, to prove that a woman is not born simply to be broken. I left through the back door, the one that led straight to the yard. The night was dark, moonless. Better that way, no one would see me. I walked slowly through the yard, passing the fruit trees, the chicken coop, until I reached the back fence. I jumped. Everything hurt, but I jumped. I paused at that fence, my hand resting on the rough wood. I looked back at the house one last time. In those dark windows slept 15 people who shared my blood. A voice in my head, that old, tired voice of a mother, whispered, "How can you leave them? They are yours." It was the hardest moment of my life, harder than the beatings. But then I remembered Alexander's swollen eye. I remembered Mason's cold sneer. I realized I wasn't leaving children behind. I was leaving the cycle. If I stayed, I couldn't save them. I could only be their victim. Saving myself was the only motherly thing left I could do to show them, even if they never understood, that a woman is not a thing to be broken. On the other side, the dirt road, the road that led away. I started walking fast. Every step was pain in my bruised body, but it was also freedom. Every yard left behind was a yard more distance from that hell. I walked, walked, walked. I didn't look back once. If I looked, I was afraid of losing courage. When the sun began to lighten the horizon, I was already far, some 5-6 miles. I didn't know exactly where I was going, only knew I was going far. Far from Richard, far from my sons, far from that damned ranch. I walked until I reached a small village. I don't remember the name. There was a church. I sat on the church steps and cried. I cried everything I hadn't cried in those years. Cried from pain, from relief, from fear, from hope. Cried until I had no more tears. It was there that a lady found me. She was going to open the church for the 6 o'clock service. Saw me sitting there, all bruised, with a bag on my back, and asked, "My child, are you okay? Need help?" I looked at her. It was a lady of about 60 years, short, with a kind face. And I told the truth. I ran away from home. I have nowhere to go. She didn't ask anything else, just said, "Come with me." This lady was named Betty. She took me to her house, a simple 3-room house in the village, gave me food, gave me a bath, gave me a clean bed. And when I told my story, not everything, but enough, she cried with me. "You were very brave, my child, very brave." I stayed at Mrs. Betty's house for 3 months. She hid me, protected me. I learned later that Richard sent people looking for me. They went to town, asked everywhere, but no one knew anything. No one turned me in. After 3 months, with Mrs. Betty's help, I managed to get work as a housekeeper in a bigger city, further away. That was how I restarted, from zero, with the clothes on my back, the trauma in my soul, but with one thing I hadn't had in a long time: freedom. The surprise of that day, of Richard arriving back, of Richard showing that everything had been planned by him, wasn't just discovering the truth. It was discovering that even after that horrible truth, I still had the strength to choose myself, to choose to live, to choose to leave and never look back. My dears, from the time I ran away until today, 40 years have passed. 40 years of reconstruction, of healing, of learning. It wasn't easy, no. There were days I thought about giving up. There were nights I cried until I slept from exhaustion. But I survived. And more than that, I learned to live again. After those 3 months at Mrs. Betty's house, I got work as a housekeeper in Grand Rapids. It was a bigger city, further from Adrian, where I thought no one would find me. I worked in the house of a good family, Mrs. Helen and Mr. Gerald. They treated me with respect, paid me fairly, gave me a small room in the back to live. I stayed there 7 years. They were years of hard work, but also of peace. Peace I hadn't known for decades. In 1993, I moved to Ann Arbor to work in the house of a retired couple. I stayed there another 12 years, taking care of them until they passed. Then I worked in 2 more houses, always as a housekeeper, always saving every penny I could. I never married again, never wanted to. The idea of sharing life with a man gave me shivers. I preferred to stay alone with my freedom, with my peace. It was only in 2010, when I was already 61 years old, that I decided to return to Adrian. I know it seems crazy, right? Going back to the place where I suffered so much, but you know how it is. We get old and miss our hometown, miss the smell of the air, the way the sun hits the hills, people talking with that accent I've known since I was little. And I discovered, through an acquaintance, that Richard had died in 2008, heart attack. The sons had sold the ranch and scattered across America. None of them lived in Adrian anymore. So, I went back. I bought a simple little house here in the center of town, with the money I had saved all these years of work. It's small, but it's mine, all mine. And here I live my days of peace, finally. I wake up every day early, as I always did. But now it's because I want to, not because someone forces me. I water my little plants and how my garden has grown. I drink my coffee with milk on the porch. I see the neighbors passing. I greet everyone. People here know me as Mrs. Dottie, that quiet lady who lives alone and takes care of the most beautiful flowers on the street. I crochet too. Learned watching videos on the internet. Yeah, this grandma here learned to use the computer. My neighbor's granddaughter taught me. I make doilies, table centers, blankets, sell some at the craft fair that is here every Saturday. It's not to make a lot of money, no. It's more to occupy the hands and the head and to talk to the other ladies who also sell their little things there. It's nice to have friends, you know, to have people who care about you for real. My routine is simple, and I thank God every day for it. I wake up, take care of the plants, make my coffee, take a shower, get dressed up. I like to get dressed up, even without having anywhere to go. Put on a clean dress, put on a little lipstick. It's a way of saying, I deserve care, I deserve respect, even if it's just me giving it to myself. We spend so much time waiting for others to bring us love, don't we? But after 76 years of life, I've learned that the most lasting, important romance is the love we give ourselves. Don't wait for anyone else. Go put on that lipstick for yourself today. In the morning, after coffee, I sit here in my rocking chair and crochet. I have a blanket I've been making for 3 months now. It's big, with colorful flowers, each square a different color. When I finish, I'm going to give it as a gift to Mrs. Betty. She is still alive, still lives in that village. She's already 100 years old, but going strong. I visit her every month, bring homemade bread. We drink coffee together and talk about life. She was my angel on earth, you know. Without her, I wouldn't be here today. In the afternoon, after lunch, which I make just for me, very well done, because I learned that I deserve good food. I watch my soaps. I like the afternoon soaps, the lighter ones, more romantic. Then I go to the fair when it's Saturday, or go visit a friend, or stay right here reading magazines, watching television, resting. At night, before sleeping, I pray my rosary. I give thanks for everything I have, for the little house, for the plants, for the friends, for the health, which is still good, thank God, despite everything I went through. I give thanks for having had the courage to leave that house. I give thanks for every day of freedom. I never had contact with my sons again, never wanted to. I know it may seem hard, but for me they died that day I discovered the truth. I don't have anger anymore, no. Anger tires, anger sickens. But I also don't have the desire for reunion, for forgiveness, for those things people think we have to do. I made my peace my way, cutting that past out of my life. But do you know what's funny? I have grandkids now, not by blood, but by heart. They are the grandbabies of my friends here in the neighborhood. There is Timmy, 5 years old, son of Mrs. Caroline's granddaughter. He calls me Grandma Dottie and is always asking for candy. There is Mary, 7, who loves to stay here at home watching me crochet. I teach her, help her make the stitches. There is Johnny, 3, who calls my house the flower grandma's house because he loves to touch my plants. These children give me a joy I never felt with my own children, because with them I can be a grandmother for real. The one who gives affection, who tells stories, who makes cookies and lets them lick the bowl. The one who never hits, never screams, never humiliates. Grandma who protects, who loves, who cares. This is my family now. My friends, my grandkids by heart. My little plants, my little house. It is little. For those who have had so much, maybe it is. But for those who had nothing, for those who lived in hell, this here is paradise. I look through my living room window and see the sunset painting the sky orange and pink. I see the children playing in the street. I see neighbors returning from work, see life happening out there. And I'm here, sitting in my chair, with my crochet blanket on my legs, with a cup of lemon balm tea steaming on the side table. I'm at peace. And do you know what I realized in all these years, my dears? I realized that the true victory wasn't running away. The true victory was having learned to live again. It was looking at that destroyed, broken woman, without hope, and saying, "You deserve good things. You deserve to be happy." And then fighting every single day to make that come true. Today, at 76 years old, I can say with all certainty, I am happy. Not in the way I dreamed when I was a girl. I don't have a big family. I don't have wealth. I don't have status. But I have something much more valuable. I have myself back. And that, my dears, that no one will ever take from me again. There is a profound beauty in seeing Dottie find peace in the simplest things, proving that true victory isn't just about surviving the storm, but learning to love yourself in the aftermath. She has reclaimed her soul from the ashes of her past, but she has one final, vital message for anyone who might still be trapped in the darkness she escaped. Please, listen closely to these last words, they might just save a life. My dears and my darlings who accompanied me this far, who heard this whole story, I need to say some things that are in my heart. If you are going through something similar to what I went through, if you live in a house where there is no peace, where there is fear, where they hurt you in body or soul, I want you to know you are not alone. You are not alone. And as impossible as it seems right now, there is a way out. Yes, I know it's difficult. I know it seems like there is nowhere to go, that there is no way to start over, that you have no strength. I thought all that too. But do you know what I discovered? We have more strength than we imagine. We endure a lot. And when we finally decide that we don't want to endure anymore, when we choose our own life, then the miracle happens. Not a magic miracle. No. Miracle of courage. Miracle of one step at a time. Miracle of good people who appear on the path to help. I learned in this life that no one has the right to destroy you. Doesn't matter who it is, husband, son, father, brother, whoever, no one has the right to hit you, to humiliate you, to make you feel like you are worth nothing. You are worthy. You are worth a lot, you mean everything. I learned that sometimes we need to let go even of those who have our blood, if those people only bring destruction. Family is not just who is born from the same womb. Family is who cares, who respects, who loves for real. I lost 15 children, but gained a family of the heart, and that family saved me. I learned that it is never too late to start over. I was 36 years old when I ran away. I had my whole body bruised, self-esteem on the floor, without a penny in my pocket, but I restarted. Worked hard, saved money, built a new life. If I could do it, you can do it too. I learned that life can be good, can be simple, can be quiet, but can be good. Can be a rocking chair on the porch, a cup of hot coffee, a little plant growing in the pot. Can be the smile of a child calling you grandma. Can be sleeping at night without fear of waking up being beaten. It can be freedom. And I learned mainly that the most important thing is not the size of the life we live. It is the quality. It is waking up and knowing that you chose that day. It is lying down and knowing that no one hurt you. It is looking in the mirror and recognizing the person looking back at you. This is victory. This is overcoming. So, my love, if you are suffering, seek help. Look for someone you trust, a friend, a neighbor, a person from church, someone at work. Look for the authorities of your country, the places that exist to protect people who are in a situation of violence. In the United States, for example, there are women's shelters, hotlines, people willing to help. In other countries, there are too. Research, get informed, and don't be ashamed to ask for help. Shame is for those who hit, not those who get hit. And if you know someone who is going through this, don't turn your back. Don't pretend you don't see. Extend your hand. Be the angel that Mrs. Betty was for me. You can save a life, can change someone's destiny. And that, my dears, is one of the most beautiful things a human being can do for another. I survived more than that. I won. Won over fear, won over trauma, won over pain. And if I won, you can win too. Believe in yourself. Believe that you deserve good things and fight. Fight for you, for your life, for your peace. Now, my dears, I'm going to make a special request to you who arrived at the end of this video. If Grandma Dottie's story has given you even an ounce of courage, please subscribe to the channel and share it. Who knows? Somewhere out there, a desperate woman might see this video and find her own way out. And before you go, please leave a comment below with the word freedom. Write it down as a declaration of ownership over your own life. Thank you for listening, and I wish peace to every home. Goodbye, and I will see you again.